Welcome, everybody. My name is Matt Mulhern. Very excited to be here tonight. I'm a college financial aid consultant. I've been doing this is my 11th financial aid year here. So I've been helping families and guiding families through the college process for quite a while. I'm very excited. I think this is the first time that we've hosted a webinar for tech families. Very excited about that. Thank you very much for having me. Big shout out to Miss Kimberly Rivas, a college counselor there. They all do a wonderful job in the college counselor's office, but big shout out to Miss Rivas who set this up tonight. So thank you very much. So hopefully you guys learn a lot here tonight and share any and all feedback with Miss Rivas and the college counseling office. So as you can see, I work with a company called College Aid Pro, right? And our mission is to end the student loan crisis by empowering families to shop for college smarter, right? One family at a time. Right? Now, when it comes to college financial, it's just there's a lot of misinformation out there, right? A lot of inaccurate information. And it's really not anyone's fault per se, but as you see, and as we go on here tonight, you're going to get the idea, hopefully, that you get the understanding that this process is a very, what I like to say, very family specific process. And then it's also a very college specific process, right? So every family has their own set of financial circumstance, academic circumstances with the student. And then every college, right? Every college is its own business and they all do business differently, right? My job here tonight is to help you understand high level how the process works, right? How the college financial aid process works and explain to you what's available. Right. So ideally, you leave here with a much better understanding. When we do these presentations, a lot of the time we're trying to demystify the concept that college financial aid starts when I go to sit down and fill out my FAFSA in October. Right. That's not the case. Right. It's really not. College financial aid, that process, it starts right now. Right. It starts tonight and it starts by one, again, understanding how the process works. And then two, making sure that you understand the process and how your family specifically fits into that process, building a smart school list that reflects both your academic and financial needs and marrying those two things, right? The goal for every family should be best school possible for the best value possible, right? And putting those things, two things together, a lot easier said than done. But like I said, by the time I'm done here tonight, we'll give you some of the tools, some of the information that you need to spend the next spring, summer months being able to build a school list that makes sense and get your son or daughter at a great school for a great price, right? So to that point, I'm going to spend most of the time here tonight. We got about 3 hours, so plenty of time to cover all of this. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, we're going to do this in an hour, right? We're going to do this in an hour. Don't start hitting the exit button yet. No, we're gonna cover a ton of information in an hour. But my focus here tonight is not necessarily on the nuts and bolts. What's the FAFSA website, the CSS website? I'm going to touch on that. But my focus here tonight is for you junior families. What should you be doing now? How do you start strategizing? How do you start positioning yourself? How do you start understanding how much these schools are going to cost you? That's going to be my focus. So I'm going to high level, how does it work? And then give you some targeted strategies to make sure that you're positioning your family in the best way possible moving forward. To that point, I'm going to encourage questions, which I'll get to in a second. I ask that if you do have any questions, you use the Q&A button rather than the chat. It'll be easier for me to get to the questions. I'm not going to get to all your questions. I'll tell you that now. I'll get to as many as I can. Also, I can't address any specific family situations that you do have over the webinar. We have a bunch of families here tonight, so we can't talk about any specific family. That being said, you'll see this is being recorded. So everyone's going to get a copy of the recording tomorrow along with the slides, along with a link to book a free 20-minute consultation with myself, completely free, complimentary. And it's our gift to you for having us here tonight. Where you and I can talk and cover any questions we didn't get here to tonight, and more specifically about your family and that you do have going forward. That being said, feel free with the questions. I will ask that, yep, we are being recorded, and use the Q&A if we can. I will ask, as you ask the questions, do me a favor, keep the questions up to the slides that we're on. I'm going to hit on all the hot spots, 529s, divorce, all that good stuff. Do me a favor, keep the questions to the slide that we're on. It'll just make the process more easier and manageable. All right, without further ado, let's get going here. All right, that's me, Matt Mulhern. Like I said, I've been doing this for over a decade. I've helped countless families. I think I've had some clients over the years from Brooklyn Tech, but have had a ton of clients over the years from New York City. So very familiar with, a lot of you guys and situations, but there's my email. Feel free to reach out. All right. All right. So what is financial aid? Right now we're diving into it. What is financial aid? What money is available when it comes to financial aid? So there's actually financial aid is a discount on the sticker price, right? That's all it is. It's a discount on the sticker price. And there's actually three different pools of money that are available when it comes to financial aid. The third one here, self-help aid. Self-help aid, I like to say self-help aid is the least helpful, right? It's loans, it's work study. It's not what we're going to focus on, right? We want to focus on actually lowering your cost, right? We want to reduce your out-of-pocket cost. Trust me when I tell you the loans will be there, right? There's opportunity to take loans down the road, and we'll have plenty of webinars and resources to cover you on all the loan stuff. That's not what we're going to focus on tonight because that is not free money. Obviously, you got to pay that back. We're focusing on the free money, these other two pools of money, what we call need-based aid and merit-based aid. That's our focus. Merit-based aid, everyone kind of gets, everyone kind of understands, right? Merit-based aid is intuitive. It's a scholarship, right? Merit-based aid is a scholarship. Merit-based aid is all about the student, right? Student's SAT, GPA, resume, extracurriculars, if he's an athlete, if she's an artist, a musician, etc. Right? Merit-based aid is all about the student. Kid applies to a school. The school says, we really like this student, right? We want to offer them a financial incentive to come to our school, a merit-based scholarship. Everyone kind of intuitively gets that. Everyone understands that. Now, caveat to merit-based aid, and we're going to dive into this. Not every school offers merit scholarships, right? The Ivy Leagues, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Brown, the NESCAC schools, right? Which is like Amherst, Bates, Middlebury, Colby. They do not give merit-based scholarships. You cannot get a merit award to those schools, right? Why? Because they deal in in the other pool of money, what they call need-based financial aid, right? And we really said need-based and merit-based is opposite because merit-based aid is all about the student, right? Need-based financial aid is all about the family, right? Basically the family's financial profile. It's why you fill out the FAFSA, right? The financial aid application, right? So need-based aid, merit's all about the student. Need-based aid is all about the family, right? So we say, okay, Matt, we understand merit-based aid. A school likes my kid. We apply, they offer merit-based scholarship. How about need-based financial aid? How do I know if I'm going to qualify for need-based financial aid? And if I am, how much am I going to get? So here's what you need to know about need-based financial aid and how it's calculated. Now, first thing with need-based financial aid is not binary, right? Need-based financial aid is not binary. What does that mean? It is possible, if not likely for most families, that you receive $0 in need-based aid at one school and tens of thousands of dollars in need-based aid at another, right? Like I said in the beginning, this is a very family-specific process and then a very college or school-specific process, right? Every college has their own business model, and I'm going to explain that in more detail, right? But this is the need-based financial aid equation that every school in the country uses, right? Every single school, they use the same equation to determine your eligibility for financial aid. So they go COA minus EFC equals need, right? So COA is the cost of attendance. It's that big, scary sticker price, right? 30, 50, 70, some schools upwards of $90,000. Your all-in cost, room, board, tuition, fees. They then subtract what's called your EFC, right? Guys, if you walk away tonight only understanding one thing, obviously it's going to be, wow, I really like that Matt guy. But if the other thing is one other thing that you walk away with tonight, it's what is the EFC? Drill this into your mind. It's that important, right? The EFC stands for the expected family contribution. As a side note, that EFC, they're changing it to what they call the SAI, Student Aid Index. It's a distinction without a difference. But if you hear SAI, it's the same thing, right? So we're just going to operate with the EFC, okay? So the EFC is the minimum amount that a college thinks that you're able to pay, is an actual dollar amount that is assigned to your family, right? So if anyone here on the webinar tonight or watching later on, if you've ever filled out a FAFSA before, right? You fill out the FAFSA, the student information, the parent, income, assets, etc. You click submit. You get congratulations, your FAFSA submitted. They then show you the EFC number, your family's EFC, expected family contribution. A lot of times it has 0000, then it'll give you the number, right? So that's an actual dollar amount assigned to your family. For better or worse, you want to know what that number is. It's that important, right? Because what a school will do is they take their cost of attendance. I'm just going to use some hypothetical numbers, right? Their cost of attendance is $80,000. They subtract your family's EFC. Let's hypothetically say it's 30. They go 80 minus 30. So at that particular school, you're eligible for $50,000 in need-based aid, right? That's your eligibility for need-based aid. Now, just because you are eligible for need-based financial aid, right, does not necessarily mean that's what you are going to get, right? Why? Because every college does business differently, right? They all meet that need number differently. Some schools will meet that at 100%, right? Columbia, as an example, their sticker price, again, ballpark number 80,000. My EFC is 30, 80 minus 30. I'm eligible for 50,000 at Columbia. Columbia is going to give me $50,000 in grant money. Why? Because they meet 100% of need-based aid. And again, not to vilify, but I like to use Penn State as the opposite end of the spectrum, right? Penn State's a sticker price of 60,000, right? My EFC is 30. They go 60 minus 30. At Penn State, I'm eligible for $30,000 in grant money, right? How much are they going to give me? Zero. They're not going to give me anything. Why? Because that's how Penn State does business. They're going to say, go take that self-help aid, go take a loan. They're not going to give you any need-based financial aid. So it's important to understand when it comes to need-based financial aid, one, what's your EFC? And then the schools that you're applying to, right? How do they do business, right? How do they do business? And that's going to determine how much money you actually get in need-based financial aid, right? So if we start to, like I said, I've been doing this for over a decade. When we first started doing this, and probably right now, you're probably thinking, all right, that's great. I understand how the equation works, but one, how do I figure out my EFC, right, without submitting a FAFSA come October next year? And two, how am I supposed to know how these schools do business, right? How am I supposed to know that Penn State's not going to give me anything, right? Great questions. And to answer those questions, that was the foundation of us creating a software, right? And so when you registered for the webinar tonight, hopefully you got a link and had the opportunity to create a MyCap account. Right. And so this is my sample profile here for MyCap. You could go, hopefully some of you have created this already. If not, you can go ahead and create this now. And what this software does, it has obviously has a lot of functions, but the impetus of it was one, let's answer the question, how does a family figure out their EFC? It shows you right here, right? So you could figure out your EFC tonight. Okay. So it shows you right here. And then two, all right, the colleges that I'm looking at, the colleges I'm interested in, how do I know how much money they're going to give? It shows you right here. I'm going to show you a couple different features of this later on, but just high level, what I want you to take away here is that the sticker price of the school, a lot of the times, is not the most important factor of what you're actually going to pay. It's about what is my family's EFC, right? And then how does a school do business? So for this family, right, 18,000 federal EFC, and I'm going to talk about the differences in EFCs on another slide, but we'll operate here, right? So it's an $18,000 EFC. So at Columbia, they have the sticker price of 86,000, right? They subtract my family's EFC. Columbia is going to cost this family, right, $23,000 to $24,000 a year, right? Why? Because Columbia, if you click on them, you're going to see Columbia is going to give this family $62,000 in grant money, right? Again, how do they figure that out? They take their sticker price, 83,000, 86,000. They subtract my family's EFC. That equals my eligibility for need. That's how they decide that. So Columbia is going to cost me less than a SUNY, right? For this, how about Penn State, right? Penn State sticker price, 60,000. I'm eligible for $40,000 in grant money, right? But what are they going to give me? Zero. They're not going to give me anything. And that's true, right? 9 out of 10 of you, 9.5 out of 10 of you, out of state, Penn State, you're going to pay $60,000. It's who they are as a school. For better or worse, you want to know that going in, right? I'm not telling you don't go to Penn State, but I am telling you, if you do go, it's going to cost you 60 grand. So right? So you could put any school that you want in and get the expected cost, right? I'm going to come back to this, but hopefully now we get an understanding that, wrong one. Hopefully now we get an understanding, I think I'd be better at the Zoom by now. We get an understanding of how important understanding what our family EFC is, right? For better or worse, we want an understanding of that. Now how do you know your EFC? So again, the best place to figure out your EFC, I'll toot my own horn, is using our software, right? And again, it's completely free. You can do that tonight. We're going to talk about siblings, Rachel. We'll get there. Yes, this is being recorded. Okay. And the website is collegeapro.com or mycat.collegeapro.com. Hopefully you got a link in order to sign up, and I'll make sure that you have the website before you leave. Okay, so now we say, okay, we understand the importance of the EFC. We understand schools do business differently. To the point of one of the questions I was just asked, how do they calculate the EFC? And there's a website for the software. Follow that link and you can go create your free account right now and set that up and start to get a handle on what your EFC is right now, right? And you can put up to 3 schools in there completely free and start to get an idea of what are these schools going to cost me, right? We're 6-8 months away from submitting a single application, and you're already starting to get a handle on how is this particular school going to treat my family. Very important. This is what we're talking about, the strategy of building a smart school list, target safety reach, both from an admissions perspective, but you also have to consider that financial component, guys. Okay, so what do we need to know about our EFC? What are the components of the EFC? What makes up the EFC? Dependent students, Samantha. Okay, what do we need to know about our EFC? So right here, this slide, I'm going to talk about assets, right? Just assets. The next slide, I will talk about your income, right? But right here, we're talking about assets, okay? So the first thing that you want to know about assets, and this is not income, income is different, but assets are reported day of, right? What does that mean? When you go to sit down and fill out your financial aid applications in October, November, December, whenever you do it, you report the assets as they are at that time. I'll be honest, it's a little more nuanced than that, but that is the rule, okay? So that's first and foremost, assets are reported in real time. Now, I'm right here, parent assets versus student assets. This is the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to making sure that you keep your EFC as low as possible. So ideally, when you go to sit down to fill out the financial aid applications, you do not have any assets in the student's name, right? I'll say that again. Ideally, when you go to fill out the financial aid applications, you don't have any assets in the student's name, right? Why? Because they factor in student assets into the EFC at a much higher percentage than they do parent assets. In other words, $20,000 in student assets will increase your EFC much higher than $20,000 in parental assets, right? 9 times out of 10, you don't even have to do anything. You just have to understand the rule. If your kid has $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 in a local checking or savings, birthday, summer job, bar mitzvah, whatever, that account 9 times out of 10 has your name as a parent already on it, right? You're a co-signer, a joint co-holder of that account, or custodian of the account sometimes. That means your name and social is on that account as a parent. It is your asset as a parent, and that's how you report it on the FAFSA, right? And again, that's what you want because parent assets are factored in at a lower percentage. 529s, right? 529s. Guys, I see this mistake every single year with families reporting their 529s incorrectly. And honestly, it's intuitive. It makes sense, the mistake. They say, okay, the 529, it's in Matt Jr.'s name, being used for his education. He's the beneficiary. It's his asset as a student, right? Wrong. 529s, every single one of them, by rule, is a parental asset, right? The parent is the custodian of the account. It's their asset. The student's the beneficiary, right? So if you have $50,000 in a 529, when you go to fill out the FAFSA, that $50,000 goes under parent assets, not student assets, right? Very important, because if you report that 50 as a student asset, 1, you're doing it wrong, but 2, most importantly, you're driving up your own EFC inadvertently, right? So don't make that mistake. If you have an UPMA, unfortunately, that is a student asset. So you do have 6 months if you can make any moves with that, because that will count as a student asset by rule, right? An UPMA or an UGMA. If you're in that position, you do have options. Definitely recommend a chat with myself or another financial aid counselor, okay? So that's parent assets and student assets. How about retirement accounts? Or actually high level, what's an asset, right? What do they look at? What are they actually looking at? I'm going to talk about houses in a second. Right now, we're talking about your liquid accounts. So basically, and this one usually makes people pretty happy, anything in a retirement account, right? Anything in a retirement account, 401k, Roth IRA, 403b, 457, anything in a retirement account is off the table, does not go on your FAFSA, right? It's off the table for financial aid purposes. It is not a factor in your EFC, okay? Very helpful most of the times. Everything else is fair game, right? Checking, savings, brokerage, bonds, whatever else that you have, okay? Anything else liquid. Everything else is fair game, but anything in a qualified retirement account is off the table, okay? How about debt? Is debt considered, right? And I get it. You say, Matt, we live in New York City. You know, the property tax is through the roof. The cost of living is through the roof. To our income is nothing as compared to if I lived in whatever, Kentucky or Iowa or wherever else. I get that. Unfortunately, that cost of living, even though colleges might tell you they don't, There's no adjustment for that. So that kind of is what it is. It's unfortunate, I know. Also, things like consumer debt, credit card debt, Matt, I have 2 car payments. Any of that, unfortunately, none of that is going to count or work in your favor. No school in the country is going to consider any of that. Things that schools will consider, right? If you're paying high school tuition for another kid, right? You have a younger kid paying high school or grammar school tuition. You have significant medical bills, right? God forbid someone has cancer, some of that nature. I had a family the other day where they had a special needs child, significant costs. Those are some things that schools will take into consideration, right? Now, if anyone's ever filled out a FAFSA before, there's no room for context or circumstance or explanation. It's just numbers. So if you do have one of those mitigating circumstances, it's up to you to go and speak with the financial aid office and let them know about your situation. They're not going to ask you, certainly. You have to be proactive in addressing that. Okay. Okay. How about, yep, we're getting to houses right now. When it comes to houses, right? When it comes to houses. So your primary, now here's a big difference, right? Between the FAFSA and there's a second financial aid application called the CS profile. So when you fill out the FAFSA, your primary residence, the house you live in, is irrelevant. They do not ask about the primary residence, that the house that you live in on the FAFSA. It's completely off the table. Okay. However, there's 200 private schools in the country. Princeton, Yale, the Ivies, Boston U, BC, a lot of the elite private schools. There's about 200 of them, and 5 public schools: Georgia Tech, William and Mary, UVA, Michigan, North Carolina, Chapel Hill, boom, 5. They, in addition to the FAFSA, they require the CS profile. It's an additional financial aid application, right? It's a much more in-depth financial aid application. There's a slide on it in a little bit. They will ask about your house, right? So again, your primary residence is irrelevant on the FAFSA, but if you're applying to one of these 200 private schools, your house does come into play. And so they ask you 4 questions: what year you bought it, how much you paid for it, and the 2 key ones: how much is it worth now, and what do you owe on it, right? So let's say hypothetically my house is worth $500,000 and I owe $200,000, right? I have $300,000 in equity. That's what they're looking at, the amount of equity. When it comes to real estate property, schools are concerned about the equity, right? So in this scenario, I have $300,000 in equity. That all counts against my EFC, right? That $300,000 they treat the same as cash in the bank. It's not fair. I know it's wrong, but it is. We have to understand that, and we want to mitigate that as much as we can, right? We subscribe and we advise folks to use what we call the IRS quick sale value, or the IRS quick sale rule, which is an actual rule in the tax code. And it states that if you have to turn around and sell your house tomorrow under duress, the IRS understands that you might not receive fair market value. You might get about 20% less than fair market value. We subscribe to using that valuation, right? Again, the lower you value your home, the less equity you show, the lower your EFC, right? So in this hypothetical, my house is worth $500. I'm going to use that quick sale rule. Now I'm going to say it's worth $400. I owe $200. So instead of $300,000 in equity, now I show $200,000 in equity, right? So again, I want to shrink that equity as much as I can to lower my EFC as much as possible. If you have an investment property, a vacation home, a second home, any other real estate, they're not worried about the cash flow. That's factored into your income, right? It's all about equity. They're concerned about home equity. You can use this quick sale rule to value any piece of property that you have to report on the CSS profile, right? So again, your house doesn't count on the FAFSA. It does on the CSS profile. And what they're looking at is equity. Shrink that equity as much as you can, right? Now, if you have a valuation, a Zillow, a neighborhood comp, tax assessment even, that shows a lower valuation, go lower. Get to the lowest reasonable value that you can get, okay? Guys, do me a favor and put the questions in the Q&A. Okay, so that's assets, right? That's the asset portion of the program here, okay? And now we're going crazy. All right, here's income soon. Here we go. Yep, income. All right, so what do we want to know about income? So I'm going to assume most of you guys are class of 2024, right? So your base income year, or the tax year that they're going to use, is tax year 2022. So it's the taxes that you've already just done or are going to do soon, right? Now, for better or worse, you do not get a choice. You have to use your 2022 tax returns. For some folks, that works for them. Some folks, it works against them, unfortunately. It is what it is, right? So initially, when you go to fill out the financial aid applications, you have to use that tax year. If 22 is an aberration for whatever reason, You then have, once you get admitted, once you get an award, you have an opportunity to appeal. Basically say 22 is an aberration. Here's my story, but you have to use 22 off the bat, right? Unfortunately, for some of you, maybe fortunately for others, you have to use 22 for the class of 2024, right? That's the rule. If any underclassmen, right, your class of 25 sophomores, they're going to use your 23, and freshmen, they're going to use your 24, right? It's always 2 years behind. The main income line, right, when we talk about, if you go to fill out the MyCap tool and they ask for gross wages, they're looking basically at the line 11, the adjusted gross income. That's what they're going to base it on. So when you do the MyCap tool, you want the earnings to equal to the AGI, right? And that might not be exactly your wages. You might have a capital gain or whatever, interest income, but basically they're looking at the AGI. So when you do the MyCap tool, have the earnings equal the AGI, right? That's what they're factoring in. And then student income allowance. What does that mean? Do not confuse income and assets, right? Don't confuse income and assets. If the student shows any asset, it will count against you, or get, right? That will increase your EFC. However, in 2022, if your son or daughter had a part-time job or something of that nature, and they showed income less than $7,000, that does not count into your EFC, right? So income-wise in 2022, anything less than $7,000 for the student does not count into the EFC calculation. Once you cross $7,000, now it starts to count significantly, right? So just be aware of that. Now, you do have to do this every year, right? You have to fill out the financial aid applications every year. However, let me tell you, the first year is the most important. It's also the most difficult because you're applying to 8, 10, 12, 15 schools, whatever the number is. In subsequent years, you're only dealing with one school. And a little inside baseball, subsequent years, basically, unless your situation changes dramatically, you're going to get what you got freshman year, right? So if NYU gives my family $30,000 in grant money, they budget for that too, right? They have budgets. They say, all right, we expect to give them 30 grand every year. Not to say that the school can't change an award, they can. All of their focus, emphasis, and manpower goes on to applying students, right? And so it's imperative that you maximize the amount of aid you receive freshman year, right? All right, so that's income, right? So that's tackling income and assets. Let me take a quick. Yeah, guys, you got to ask in the Q&A, please. Yeah, we tackled mortgages. Second property. So if you have a second property, you put your valuation, right? So again, say your second property, you own half of it. It's worth 500. You put 250 on the CSS profile. Cars are not considered assets. Co-ops are treated the same way. If you own it, if you're taking the tax, they look at your tax returns. If you're taking the tax deductions on the property, then then you own it. Yeah, if you're no longer employed and it's not reflected in your 22 income, you need to appeal. Yeah, again, for anonymous, you lost a job in 23. You have to use your 22 return, unfortunately. You have to use those numbers. And then you have to initiate an appeal, special circumstance, a change of circumstance. So anytime you have a change like that, it's a back-end process, unfortunately. You have to go and talk to each individual financial aid office, right, for each of the schools that you applied to or are admitted to. Most schools won't listen to an appeal until you get admitted. Okay, so what if you don't qualify for need-based aid, right? No matter what you do, the tips, the tricks, you lower your EFC as much as possible. I'm sure there's some folks tonight that will watch. It doesn't matter what you do. Your EFC is going to exceed the cost of attendance at every school, right? So if your family you have an EFC of 100,000, the first thing you want to know that, right? You have to know that, okay, my family's EFC is 90, 100, 150, whatever. It's over the cost of attendance of a school. You're not going to get any need-based financial aid. The first step is knowing that and understanding that, right? Then in order to get a discount, you have to apply to schools that give merit money, right? So now that pool of need-based money is off the table for you. Does not mean you have to pay $85,000, right? It means you have to apply to schools that give merit. Again, how do I know which schools give merit, which don't? That's why we built the software, right? So we come back here and we can see, and I know Brooklyn Tech are very STEM heavy, so I threw some STEM examples. There's schools out there that give heavy merit. Columbia, if you have a $100,000 EFC at Columbia, they're not going to give you a dime, right? Why? Because all they give is need-based financial aid. And here's how you can find it. You go on the Columbia website, you click financial aid. They meet 100% of need-based financial aid. Merit aid, not reported. Why? Because it doesn't exist. They don't give merit aid. right? So you need to know that. You have $100,000 EFC, you're applying to Columbia, you're paying the sticker price. Again, I'm not telling you not to apply. I'm not telling you not to go there, but I am telling you to understand how they do business in relation to your family. And if you do have a very high EFC, understand Columbia is not going to give you any money, right? They do not give merit. However, you say, listen, just because you have 100, and most families fall in this position, just because you have $100,000 EFC does not mean you're in a position to start writing checks for $85,000 a year. So you need some sort of discount. You have to find schools and target schools that give merit. So Case Western, great example, right? Case Western, we come here, right? So for this student, ignore the need because you're not getting any. They're going to give this kid $28,000 in merit, right? How do I know what the merit is? Well, we scroll down here. So firstly, we come here. Case Western gives merit to 30, almost 40% of their admitted students, high percentage, right? So we scroll down here and we can see the different merit awards that exist at Case Western, right? So for this kid, he has 31.36. He's going to get $28,000 in merit, right? To a great STEM school in Case Western. I'll give you another one, which I put up here. Had a big Stevens, right? I'm actually in Jersey City, right? My neck of the woods here in Hoboken. Stevens, right? They're not as strong with need-based aid, right? They only give 77%. Why? Because they give a lot more merit, 28%. And so, this kid's getting $20,000, right, in merit money. So just because you have $100,000 EFC, it doesn't mean that you have to pay $85,000. It doesn't mean that you can't go to a great school on a discount, right? You have to target schools that will give you merit. University of Delaware, excellent engineering program, right? For this kid, they're going to give him 15 grand, right? We're getting to a cost of 41,000 to out-of-state school here, right? Maybe you get an out-of-state offset, right? If you get high enough. And now you're looking at whatever that number is, 41, whatever it is. So, you can identify merit awards using the software as well. So again, the point being, you have to understand, it's all about what schools you apply to. Understand where your EFC is, and then apply to schools that are going to give you merit. And again, down here, right, Ivy Leagues, like I said, the NESCACs, which are like Bates, Bowdoin, Colby, Middlebury, they don't give merit. Schools like Duke, Johns Hopkins, Vanderbilt, Notre Dame, do they give merit? Yes, technically, but, and I'm not exaggerating, they give merit to like 2 to 3% of their admitted students. That includes athletes. So for all intents and purposes, those schools do not give merit. So again, you have to understand where your EFC is and then apply to schools that will give your family money or your student money. Very important. Also, you want to apply to competing colleges, right? And I like to use the example of Sacred Heart, Fairfield, Quinnipiac, right? Connecticut colleges. All of those schools are competing for the same student, same type of student, right? You apply to Sacred Heart, Fairfield, Quinnipiac. One of them gives you 20,000. The other one gives you 25 or 30. You can take that one award and go back to Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart, you're my number one choice. Fairfield gave us 25. Can you match that? Fairfield gave us 30. Can you match that? And those type of schools are competing with each other. So imperative, that's what I said in the beginning. The financial aid process starts now, and it starts with building a smart school list that makes sense for your family. Every family is going to have a different strategy to find a discount. You just have to understand it. And again, it starts with understanding your EFC and then understanding how the schools you're interested in do business. And again, even if you're not going to receive a merit, if you're not going to get any need-based aid, say you're looking at Penn State, it's going to cost you 60 grand. How about you look at a James Madison, right? Or, where I went, University of Florida, right? Go Gators. Tremendous schools, out of state, but instead of paying $60,000, they're $40,000. You're talking about an $80,000 savings. Also, if you have an elite student, a very strong student that is looking at the Bates, the Amherst, the Tufts, the Harvards, the Yales, the Vanderbilts, they're very strong academically, look at public school honors programs, right? University of South Carolina, I tell this story, but I don't want to run short on time. So long story short, I had a kid get into Brown. It was going to cost him $70,000. It was only 70 at the time. He wound up going to the University of South Carolina honors program to study international business. He went for $20,000 a year. So instead of graduating with $500,000 or $250,000 in student loan debt, he went to University of South Carolina honors program, graduated debt-free in a tremendous program. Listen, in a vacuum, no one is choosing South Carolina over Brown, right? But we're not in a vacuum, right? There's real dollar amounts attached to these. And so every family in every situation can find a discount. It's just about strategizing, understanding how it works, and strategizing appropriately. So a little more about merit-based aid. It's almost always over 4 years. And a merit award is simply an enticement for the student to go to the school, right? It's a lot of times based on SAT, GPA, but obviously, especially now test optional, there's a more holistic look, extracurricular, et cetera. And it's awarded by the admissions office, not the financial aid office, right? So if a student earns more than $7,000, can you bring the EFC back down? Again, if so they use your 22, they're over 7. In 23, if they made less than that, you can appeal, right? The numbers are what they are for 22. If you paid off your home, yes, you will show significantly more in the equity. Yes, okay, good call. Let me explain the EFCs. That's a good point. Okay, going back to the software. So there's actually 3 different types of EFCs, right? There's the federal EFC, which is singularly based on the FAFSA, right? The federal EFC, little mnemonic device, FAFSA federal. So for this family, it's 18,000. Then we have the institutional EFC. It's 27,000. Why is this higher? Because these so the institutional EFC is used by the schools that require the CS profile, right? NYU is going to use it. Syracuse is going to use it. Case is going to use it, right? And why is this 18 and this is 27? Because this 27 takes into account this family's home equity, right? So your federal if you own your own home and show equity, your institutional EFC is going to be higher than your federal EFC, right? So this is 18, your home doesn't matter. This is 27 because your home equity counts, right? And then there's a consensus EFC, which is used by about like Columbia. There's about 33 schools in the country, maybe 35, doesn't matter. But there's 30-something schools in the country that uses this consensus EFC. They just have a little bit different formula to calculate the EFC, right? But most of the schools are either going to use the federal, which is FAFSA only, or the institutional, which is CS profile, which accounts for home equity. So those are the 3 different types of EFCs. Good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Hopefully that clarifies it. And again, that $9,000 increase in the institutional EFC is because of the home equity for this family. Okay, again, that's merit money. And here's a slide, right? What type of schools do what? Again, use the software, right? But here's some, we're going to get to siblings in college. Here's a random, not random, but a sampling of schools, right? So on the right-hand side, you have Northwestern, Notre Dame. Do those give merit awards? Yes, but, right? They give, I'm not exaggerating, they give merit award to 2% or less of their students, that to their admitted students. That also includes athletes. For all intents and purposes, there are no merit awards at Northwestern, Notre Dame, Boston College, Vanderbilt, Johns Hopkins, Duke. They all fall into that bucket. Then you have MIT, Harvard, 0 merit awards. They don't exist, right? So again, you have to understand how different schools do business differently. But now let's target some merit-based schools, right? Willamette in the Pacific Northwest, Denison, right? Kenyon, Oberlin, all give merit. Case Western, which I pointed out, University of Alabama, similar to a Delaware, big public school. The University of Alabama has been giving a ton of money to Northeast kids. I've had 3 or 4 clients this year basically pay room and board only, right? They got all the tuition covered. So they're paying whatever, $18,000 a year, whatever the number is, to go to Alabama, right? So to get merit-based, your family's finances are irrelevant. So you could have a $200,000 EFC, has no bearing on the merit-based aid, right? So again, up to you, but don't feel like you have to pay $85,000 a year. And if you're not going to get any need-based aid, these schools that meet 100% of need-based aid, you're almost always going to, right? Now, if your EFC is 20,000, these schools are absolute home runs, like I showed you earlier, right? Because they're going to give you a ton of grant money. So again, family specific, school specific, right? You have to understand where you fit in. Okay, so this is a little bit of the nuts and bolts, which again, guys, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on, but here's the FAFSA website, right? Studentaid.gov. You need to create a FSA ID, one for the student, one for the parent. We talked about they have prior year. It's accessible in October. Just FYI, I found out today that I don't think, and don't quote me on this, but I think because they're making the FAFSA changes, which I'm going to talk about in a second, this might not be available till December this year. Stay tuned for that. Keep your ears posted, or whatever. Keep your ears pinned, whatever the phrase is. But this might change to December because of the FAFSA changes. But traditionally, it's available October 1st. Again, the base income year. Guys, if you had any changes that's not reflected in your 22 tax returns, there's really nothing you can do about it initially. You have to fill them out with your 22 return. And then once you get admitted, you then go through an appeal process, right? Most schools are going to have a special circumstance form you got to fill out, et cetera, et cetera. But unfortunately, that's the back end process. Don't miss a deadline, right? Every school has their own deadlines. Deadlines are paramount. Do not miss a deadline, right? We talked about the CSS profile. There's the login for that. It's the same website that we use to register for the SATs. Again, it's required by about 200 schools in the country. Like we just talked about, they're going to use that institutional methodology to calculate the EFC, right? The major difference there is home equity is treated as a liquid asset. Now, with the CSS profile, it's a double-edged sword. It's much more invasive, much more in-depth. It does require home equity. However, the schools that require it are usually going to be more generous with need-based aid, right? So it's a give and take there. The schools that are more generous are going to require more information, right? That's how you look at it. Now, divorce separated families, right? Business owners, for business owners on the FAFSA, they ask you the value of your business. It says right next to it, if your business has less than 100 employees, you value it at 0, right? So that's the federal methodology. However, when it comes to the CSS profile, they're going to ask a lot more information about your business. When was it started, the year, what percentage you own, the gross revenues, the gross receipts, expenses, blah, blah, blah. The CSS profile does dig a lot deeper into business owners. And like doing your taxes, there's better ways to answer this than others. Okay, divorce separated situations, okay? Now, this is tricky and it's another change coming, but let me explain to you how it works. So there's a big difference between the FAFSA and the CSS. Firstly, divorce separated, the legality of the divorce or separation is irrelevant, right? If both biological parents are living in 2 separate households, right, you are for financial aid purposes in the divorce separated bucket, right? So again, mom and dad or mom and mom or dad and dad, whoever, both parents are living in 2 separate households, then you are for financial aid purposes in the divorce separated bucket. If that is the case, when you fill out the FAFSA, you are only required to provide one parent's information, right? It's like the other parent doesn't exist. Now, right now, it's the custodial parent. However, and I'm going to talk about the changes on the next slide. For you guys, class of 24, it's changing to the parent on the FAFSA is the one who provides more financial support. Listen, there's some gray area there. There's some ambiguity. What do you consider support? I pay the mortgage. They pay for hockey or soccer or whatever. So there's some gray area there, right? How do they determine that? It's unclear, quite frankly, and it's new. So you do have some strategy around that potentially in terms of who the custodial parent is on the FAFSA. However, if you apply to the CSS profile, they're going to want CSS profile with the custodial parent's information. Then they require what's called the NCP or non-custodial parent information. So those 200 private schools, they're going to use both parents, both biological parents, income and assets to calculate your EFC. That's how it works in a divorce separated situation. FAFSA, one parent, CSS profile, both parents, right? If you're in that situation, you should definitely with me. There's definitely some strategies behind that you could potentially benefit from. All right, so a lot of you guys have asked about the changes coming, and there are some significant changes. Now, be aware, class of 24, right? This is the first year that these changes are going to be implemented, right? So we'll see how it goes. Okay. So firstly, the pros, I guess they're going to make the FAFSA easier. We'll see. Easier to qualify for the Pell. Child support is no longer income; it's considered an asset, which means it will increase your EFC less. One of the biggest pros for my money is untaxed income. If you are like, I have a lot of clients that are firemen or cops, they go on disability pensions. That disability pension is untaxed. Right now, it's in play. Starting class of 24, it's no longer on the table. So if you have an untaxed pension from disability, it's not considered in the EFC calculation next year. Any 401k or 403 pre-tax contributions, those are also off the table. Right. So whatever you gave in the pre-tax year, they used to tack that back on as untaxed income. However, they no longer do. Right. Now, the cons, and the cons for me outweigh the pros. I know a lot of you guys have asked about this. Families with 2 in college. Here's the deal. Now, it's a little more nuanced than you've heard. So right now, and I'll show you, going back to the EFC, right? So when I have 1 kid in college, my family's EFC is $18,000. The rule right now, I have 2 kids in college. They say, okay, we still expect your family to come up with 18,000, but 9,000 goes to 1 kid and 9,000 goes to the other, right? They split it in half. That rule's going away. It's nonsense. Quite frankly, whoever came up with that rule doesn't understand the college process, because it's going to cost a lot of families a lot more money. It's a bad rule. But as far as we know, it's going to be implemented in 24. So that split is not implemented. However, there's some nuance here. So the split's going away for the federal calculation, the federal methodology. However, the 200 private schools that use this institutional calculation we still expect them to give sibling discounts, right? So at Columbia or NYU or Syracuse or Case, if you have two in college at the same time, this federal EFC won't split, but this institutional EFC will, right? We expect it to. And that's going to be on a school by school basis. But say you have twins, it's entirely possible that one twin has an $18,000 EFC at a federal methodology school, and the other twin has a $12,000 or whatever, $13,000 EFC at one of these private institutional based schools, right? So there is some nuance there. Some schools will still honor that split EFC, but on the FAFSA, that federal split is going away, right? Be aware there. If you already have a kid at college, say you have two kids at college already, and you're benefiting from that split, it may go away next year, right? Your EFC may double. So it's absurd. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a terrible rule, but that's the expectation coming down the road. Be aware of it. And to that point, we started a petition, change.org. I encourage all of you to sign and share it, especially those that are going to be affected. And I'm not joking when I say this. Call your congressman, right? I spoke to someone in the Department of Education, pretty high up. They didn't even know about this rule change, I think. But as far as we know, it is being implemented. So it's a bad rule. It's going to cost families a lot of money. So whatever you can to get involved and potentially stop it, especially if it's going to affect you, jump on board. All right, guys, coming down the end here. And this is the best I've ever done time-wise. So give you a quick timeline. So October, November, December, you're doing your admissions applications, you're doing your financial aid applications. Starting in December, you start getting the early decision admissions. December, January, February, all the way until April, you get your admissions and your financial aid packages. By May 1st, you got to decide, right? Send in your housing deposit and say, this is where I'm going. In between when you get the award, whenever that is, and May 1st, you have to decide. You can go through an appeal, right? And so, like, I know a lot of families in the questions had different circumstances. They lost a job, unfortunate, a death, a job loss, whatever. Now's the time you can bring that to the forefront. Here's the 5 or 6 piece plan of attack that you can implement. Again, you guys are a year away from this, so I'm not going to harp on it too much, but this is the appeal process. Bring some color, bring some life to your story, right? Your files sit in the financial aid office. They don't know anything about you, so let them know about you. Any changes that you let them know. Ask for a specific amount. That's that negotiation or leverage piece of it. So again, Fairfield, Sacred Heart, Quinnipiac, one of them offered you $10,000 more. Those schools are competing with each other for the same type of students. So they're absolutely going to consider awards by other schools. If any school says they don't consider an award by other schools, of course they do. They always do. Even if they say they don't, use other schools as leverage. And again, that's about building a smart school list. Even if you're not going to go to a school, you may want to put an application in just to get the award there. I do that for my clients all the time. You want that award in your back pocket as leverage. Be persistent, right? Be persistent. Don't take no for an answer. Jump on a phone, write an email, jump on a phone again and again. I tell the story real quick. I had a family last year, divorce situation, Syracuse, their cost, it's $85,000. Their cost initially was $50,000. Right? We went back to them. I'm not exaggerating, 7 or 8 times. We went up the ladder. I got the vice president of financial aid on the phone, explained this family situation. It was divorce. It was tricky, blah, blah, blah. They took $25,000 off. So the kid wound up going to Syracuse for $25,000. We went back to them 6 or 7 times to finally get someone that would listen and hear it. And they did a great job. They gave them $100,000 more. That's not the regular appeal. But if this mom and myself weren't together, persistent, and kept going back and back, the kid wouldn't have been able to go to Syracuse. It would have been too. So that's the appeal process. Now, where do you go from here? Right? Where do you go from here? And I know there's a lot of questions that I didn't get to, and I apologize for that, but we can rectify that very easily. One, get on our website, right? Create your account, start to get an understanding of your EFC and the schools that you're interested in. Again, completely free. Go set up your account. Also, 2, and this, you're not going to see this on our website, but because we really appreciate you guys having us here tonight and speaking in front of you, we offer you guys a free 20-minute consult. It'll be with myself. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about, but basically what I'll do is say, okay, here's your EFC. Is there anything you can do to lower it? The schools that you're interested in, how do they do business? What am I seeing? What kind of awards are they given? Are you on the right track? Are you not? Here's where you should look, et cetera, and get you squared away. So again, we'll get the recording tomorrow of this. You can listen to me over and over again. I know you all want to do that. No, but with the slides and also a link. Ooh, yeah, right on time. And also a link to book a consult myself. So please take advantage of that. And again, visit our website, College Aid Pro, set up your free MyCap account. And that's all tonight. So once again, A big shout out. Thank you very much for all in attendance. I really appreciate it. Once again, thank you, Miss Kimberly Rivas, for setting this up. Wonderful college staff over there at Brooklyn Tech. And so when you see them, if you enjoyed tonight, if you learned a lot, give us a shout out. Let them know that their efforts are appreciated. And I got 3 minutes. I'm going to scroll through some of these questions. I'm going to answer as many as I can. But once again, guys, thank you very much for coming out tonight. So the NCP, if you're in a divorce situation, the NCP is the non-custodial parent application. If you don't have the fact that the non-custodial parent doesn't contribute is not the school's problem, right? In their regard, you can get what's called an NCP waiver, right? Where you basically say, we don't have any contact with the non-custodial parent. They don't make the waiver easy to get. If they did, everyone would get it. So they make you jump through a bunch of hoops, but it is possible to get that. Yeah, the software reflects the rules for 24. So dependent and independent student, very few you're going to qualify for independent. Independent is if both biological parents have passed away and you're living with a foster parent. Here's easy. If one of the biological parents are alive and you live with the parent, then you're dependent, right? You have to be over 24 or have a child of your own to not be considered in financial aid. So how do you know which schools are competitive with each other? The easiest place to start is what conference they play in, right? The Ivy Leagues, right, play against the Ivy Leagues. The Big Ten plays against the Big Ten. They're competing for the same type of students. So the school's conference is the best place to start. That's not all of it, but that's the best place to start. How long is the free consultation go for? 3 or 4 a month, maybe. I forget. It might be 3 weeks. If you need more time, shoot me an email and I'll make a note. That's fine. All right. Appreciate it. Yeah. So for the free, it's 3 schools. Correct. All right, guys. I know I didn't get to all your questions and I apologize for that. But again, take us up on the free consult. You'll all get the recording tomorrow. And once again, I really appreciate your college guidance staff for setting this up. Yeah, we'll send the link out tomorrow with the recording, the link to the free consult. I hope to talk to most of you guys. I really wish everyone starts strategizing now. Hopefully you have the tools, the resources, and the information to put yourself in a great position. Again, look, my best advice, best school possible for the best value, right? Put those 2 things together. If you focus on that, you'll wind up being successful in this process. All right, guys, I wish you all the best. Again, thanks very much for having me. Take care. Good night.